Good afternoon from Brussels. We are starting our traditional forum of the Friends of European Russia, but also with the community of our network of United for Ukraine. My name is Andrius Kubilius. I'm a member of European Parliament from Lithuania, and those who are participating in our seminars for some period of time, you know how we are doing those webinars. So this time, really, we have very important topic and very important panel. Topic is very clear. What now is the future of Russia after Ukraine's victory and Putin regime collapse? We expect that will come very soon, especially victory of Ukraine, and how this Ukrainian victory can have an impact on the future of Russia. And is it possible to see Russia developing itself on new background, on new federal background, real background, and becoming really a normal European type country? And this discussion is very important because what we feel, being both in Brussels and having conversations with experts from both sides of Atlantic Ocean, that among community of Western experts and Western policymakers, there is some fear, and I would say sometimes quite significant, that Ukrainian victory, which all of us, we are hoping to come very soon, and which we are trying to help and to assist as we can with military assistance and so on and so on, that this victory will bring, collapse of Putin regime, and then Russia will go into total chaos, smota, and so on, or fragmentation of Russia, which can be bloody, and if you are reading those different articles or papers, you see a lot of that fear, which, from my point, is it has no real basis, but which can influence very much decision making in the Western capitals. If somebody is afraid of such kind of Russian development, then they can very easily to become afraid also of decisive Ukrainian victory. And that is when hesitation to give weapons to Ukrainian army can become very well visible. So that's why really to discuss what is possible scenario of Russia development is very important, both for Russian civil society and Russian liberal opposition, and of course very important to discuss it among Western decision makers. Also, it's very important to discuss in Ukraine itself, because Ukraine, with all its authority now in the international community, international Western community, has very big influence on how such kind of debate can go on. And today we have really very good discussion with a very clear title, A Winning Scenario, Ukraine's Victory and Re-Federalization of Russia. And we have very important experts, both from Ukraine and Russia, including somebody from now residing in Harvard. So we have two sides and somebody in the middle. I would call so. And why it is so important? Because I think that really it's important that Russian and Ukrainian experts, and even broader community, civil society and political community, would start to see more and more this common goal to in such a way to assist Russian transformation to, more normal country, more European type country, with clear understanding that this is our common goal and common task. Because this is the only way how sustainable peace on the European continent can be established. If Russia, after losing the war and after the reforms which Russia will go through, will become really a normal country without any more, of imperial nostalgias or aggressive behavior towards its neighbors. So I will not prolong my introduction. As always, logistics is very simple. All the audience, which is today really very large one. If you want to put your questions, you put your questions on chat. And we shall have initially our experts to present their views. And then, we shall have time for questions and answers. Now I will start, first of all, from Ukrainian experts who Dmytro Zolotukhin and Valery Picard, who recently published an article, which when I read it, article with the title Re-Federalization, Avoiding the Risk of Russia Collapse in New Eastern Europe. When I saw that article, I said, well, that is needed to be discussed. It's needed to be discussed, but not only with Ukrainian audience, but also with Russian experts, with Russian audience, because Russian experts, which we have also today, Alexandra Garmazhapova and Vladimir Milov, are, publishing very similar articles, very similar papers, and I was very happy today to listen to Vladimir Milov presentation here in Brussels on their thoughts on democracy developments and regionalization of Russia, or federalization of Russia, in their brilliant paper with the title "Yes, We Can," which sounded to me almost like Obama. Sentences. So that's what we have, and I can confess that really I am looking to very interesting debate, and at least in my memory, this is the first time when on the same panel we have Ukrainian experts and Russian experts after the war started last February. So I hope that this will become some kind of our new tradition, really, to talk about future of Russia. Among those who really have strong interest in that, and that's what is our goal, really, to look all together into how we can assist transformation in that part of European continent, because that is what is very, very important, not only for Russia itself, but also for all of us. So now I am giving the floor to Dmytro Zolotukhin, who is information security expert, but also Ukraine's Deputy Minister of Information Policy back from 2017-2019, and now one of the authors of this article or paper, which I quoted the title. So Dmytro, please, floor is yours, and you have 10 minutes to make your presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and thank you for organization of this event. I think, Mr. Kapilus, you are totally right about all this introduction. And first, I would like to say that we are really in the dead end because of the hesitations of the Western decision makers about whether they want or whether they do not want the defeat of Russia and the victory of Ukraine. And on the other hand, I read this paper you mentioned that was published by Mr. Vladimir Milov and his colleague Fedor Krasheninnikov. And it is true that very many ideas that we also published in our article with Valery Pekar are similar, and I still think that we have to exchange these ideas to show the nuances. This is why I will try to show you the presentation I prepared. I hope you see it on your screens, about how to overcome this fear and how to overcome this dead end. And I would like to start with a quotation from one of the latest articles published in the American media New Yorker. which titled Jake Sullivan Trial by Combat. And this is a kind of political portrait of Jake Sullivan, but the author of the article also puts this quote of the unknown official. His name was not disclosed, but this quote for me is essential for the understanding of what is really happening in the decision-making circles of the Western countries. And here is what he's saying. It is not like they think. It means like the administration of the United States. It is not like they think, oh, we're going to give them ATACMS and then Russia is going to launch an attack against NATO. It's because they recognize that it's not going anywhere, that they are fighting a war they can't afford either to win or to lose. And this is, in my humble opinion, is a perfect explanation of what is going on in these circles of decision makers in the West, both in the US and in the European Union, because people are thinking that they really do not know whether they can afford to win the war against a Russian army or to lose the war. So I prepared for you at least 5 variants of this like end game. Just to compare them with the top European Union priorities, which are, in my humble opinion, are sustainable peace as a basic priority for the development of the European society, business as usual, obviously the economical development, and the priority of the European idea, what we call a European idea, and spreading the freedom and democracy. And so we have several outcomes because we can find ourselves in the zero-sum game. So the key to end the war lies in the same place where the key to start the war. That means that it lies in Moscow, it lies in Kremlin. So this is the game, the zero-sum game. And in the zero-sum game, can be only these kind of outcomes: defeat of Ukraine, which means that European idea will collapse actually because it will show the incapability of running the European idea on this territory. Because what Ukraine is doing, Ukraine is praising the European idea of freedom and democracy and ability to choose the way. So in case of defeat of Ukraine, we will have the tyranny and autocracy to prevail. And I think that we all can agree that this is not a variant for us. This is not a variant for anyone in the civilized world, a variant of future. Then defeat of Russia. And this is exactly what you have said about the fear of the disintegration and collapse of the power inside Russian Federation, and which can result in turmoil, which can result in serious migration crises, in the uncontrolled proliferation of the nuclear weapons, and so on and so forth. So this is a fear that cannot be overcome. Third one is eternal war. So this is just a prolongation, endless prolongation of the war on the Ukrainian territory, which will definitely end with economic dead end, economical decline in all the world because of the sanctions, because of the uncertainty, and so on and so forth. So with all these 3 potential outcomes, in my humble opinion, and which is like supported by the Ukrainian experts I talked to, the Western elites have at least 2 hopes. First is hope for ceasefire between Russian and Ukrainian army on Ukrainian territory, and providing elections in Ukraine. And in my humble opinion, Volodymyr Zelensky is being pushed to start the election process in Ukraine, just because you cannot have free and fair elections without a ceasefire agreement. So elections is kind of a way, a tool how to make Zelensky to make a decision to do a ceasefire. In my humble opinion, this is absolutely irrelevant story. He will never go to this way. And second hope, which we keep hearing, that this is a Putin's death or any kind of elimination of Putin personally, that will open us the territory for the day after. So what will be the after Putin? And this narrative that when this is Putin's war, not anyone's else war, and if Putin will go somewhere or I don't know, alliance will take them. So everything will stop at the same time. So from my point of view, if we withdraw this this idea of defeat of Ukraine, which is absolutely not acceptable for any one of us, because we just will be dead and European idea will vanish. We have the paths and we have the variants that they comply with the EU priorities, which is sustainable peace, and which not comply. In my humble opinion, the ceasefire agreement will not do the sustainable peace because we already had the Minsk agreements. Putin's death will, and replacement of Putin with any kind of other person, would it be the Patrushev Jr. or anyone, it will not bring the peace because they will try to trade the end of war for their certain benefits in the new elites of Russian Federation. And the war of attrition, which we have now, obviously is not leading us to peace. So the only one scenario that leads us to sustainable peace is the Russia's defeat. But this narrative, this scenario is bringing fear to Western decision makers. And we, with Valery Pekar, we made a previous article trying to explain why it brings fear to Western decision makers. And our hypothesis is this is because the huge uncertainty that will be opened by the Russia's defeat, by this scenario. This is huge uncertainty and no one knows what's gonna be after the Russian defeat. So we have to define what is Russian defeat particularly. We have to clarify it, and we have to eliminate the uncertainty of these outcomes of the end game. So to tell what is Russian defeat, we need to explain what we see when saying Russia and what we see saying defeat. In my humble opinion, Russia is an imperial concept that the Russian Federation cannot exist the other way, but through the authoritarian rule of Kremlin. So only Kremlin can run all these territories. And defeat, for me personally, it means that Kremlin power vertical, which was built by Boris Yeltsin and Vladimir Putin, will be eliminated, and institutions, democratic institutions, will be rebuilt. And particularly, this is a Federation Council, the representation of the regions, and the Duma, parliament of the Russian Federation. In my humble opinion, this thought it completely complies with what Vladimir Milov and Fyodor Krasheninnikov put in their latest report. So how we see the sustainable peace that should follow the Russian defeat, the defeat of Russian army in Ukraine. We see that situation in Russian Federation transforms, and subjects of the Russian Federation and their political movements can defend their economic, human, social, and other rights through the mechanism of the federal representation, and can choose to exist as an autonomous region within the Russian Federation, or try to say, if they want to, that they want to perceive the and obtain the independence, and they want to be the independent state. And in my humble opinion, this is completely what was the basement for the federal agreements 1991, 1992, the talks before Boris Yeltsin forced the coup d'etat to push his own variant of constitution. But I think that this is where we started. This is where the Russian Federation started. So in my humble opinion, if we can follow this way, Russia's defeat and then sustainable peace, then we can have huge benefits on the both sides, in Ukraine, in Russian Federation, and in European Union. First is who will benefit from the defeat of Russia. In my humble opinion, this is local federal elites. So the subjects of federation and local elites that are living and ruling in there. And from the point of view of the European Union, they can provide more efforts to rebuild business as usual than Moscow can provide for the European Union. When I ask, for example, what Berlin wants, what Germany wants, do they want heating in their premises? Do they want their houses to be heated? Or do they want cooperate only with Gazprom. If you just need the result, if you need your house to be heated, you don't have to work only with Gazprom, because Gazprom is an absolutely unpredictable partner, and they will proceed with doing all these videos how to freeze European Union in this year also. But you can have other business as usual with other regions, for example, with the regions where you can have gas, oil, and other raw materials and whatever else. Second one, we can work with those who choose life, future, and money over the loyalty to Putin. And for me, this is also the important part, because in Ukraine, it is very less popular thought, because this way we have to think that we can think about cooperation, maybe not cooperation, maybe not negotiations, but thinking about how to work with all the political spectrum, with people who are now representing the United Russia, the ruling party of Russian Federation. But we know why they are in the United Russia, because if you want to rule the country, if you want to rule your region, you have to be the representative of the United Russia. This is not because they are big lovers of Putin. But this approach can provide us with another process of the federal decision-making, when their representatives, for example, in Council of Federation, they can present their willing, not just being loyal, absolutely loyal to Putin, and give him absolutely not without hesitations the ability to use the army against any states like Ukraine, because it was the Senate, it was the Council of Federation who gives the permission, the grant permission to Putin to use army against Ukraine. And third, this is for me is important to think that we can work with full spectrum for representatives. That means that it can be the wide political supply of the new powers, which can be represented by the Russian opposition. Again, I mean that it can be people from formerly United Russia political party, and it can be people who are now dissidents. They want their regions to be independent, like the political movements of independence of Tatarstan, Bashkortostan, Sakha-Yakutia, Dagestan, and so on and so forth. For example, yesterday I've been at the same roundtable of your colleague, Rasa Yuknevchenen, and one of the participants from the Dagestan, he was saying that, yes, we would like to think about the independence of Dagestan, but we are fearing that we will follow the follow the path of Chechnya, having a huge war, two huge wars, and having slaughtering just our men. And in this regard, I would like to use this quote from Mr. Vladimir Milov and one of his latest articles on the platform libmod.de. He was saying about very low perspective, very low possibility of disintegration of the Russian Federation. And I think that this article is full of very strong arguments, but this particular quote I would like to stress just to launch a discussion. So he's saying that some hothead disintegrationistas voluntarily hand the power propaganda tool to Putin. Well, firstly, I would like to tell you, as a former Deputy Minister of Information Policy who was responsible for countering Russian propaganda, that Putin can use anything as a propaganda tool. For example, he can use the talks about LGBT rights, about gender equality, about human rights. He can use it as his propaganda tool, but it doesn't mean that we stop talking about this. We are not stop talking about LGBT rights, about gender equality, and so on and so forth, because this is essential for us. And secondly, I can consider myself as these hothead disintegrationistas, if I may say, because I think that if Russia will continue to exist in this form under the Putin's power as an empire, it will disintegrate sooner or later, because this is what empires do. Historical facts says to us that empires disintegrate sooner or later. That will come tomorrow. That will come in another 60 or 80 years, but that will happen. And this fear will be true. And why I'm thinking like this? Mr. Kubilius was comparing Mr. Milov to Obama with these efforts like we can. It's not that I'm trying to compare him to George Bush Sr., but George Bush was presenting his speech in front of Ukrainian parliament in August 1991. And it is famous Chicken Kiev speech when he was saying that Americans will not aid those who promote a suicidal nationalism. And this particular narrative was sent to Ukrainian MPs, just saying not, please do not proclaim independence, please do not separate from Soviet Union, because we support your democracy, but you should stay inside the Soviet Union. And we all know what has happened in 10 days after he presented this speech. Soviet Union has collapsed. So for me, it shows that it doesn't matter who is trying to promote the disintegration of Russian Federation, whether we like it or not, whether we support disintegration or not. If Russia will remain an imperial country, it will happen. And this is my very simple argument, very simple message to you. So we have to pick a side, we have to make a decision, whether we fearing the victory of Ukraine, whether we fearing the defeat of Russia. If Russia remains an empire, it will disintegrate, whether Ukraine wins or loses the war with Putin power vertical. Because if Russia is an empire ruling by Putin, it will disintegrate. If we do not want it to disintegrate, if we want it to remain a united democratic country, it is only possible after the defeat of Russian army in Ukraine. I will stop on this. Thank you very much for this time. I will be ready to answer the questions.
Okay, good. Thanks a lot, Dmitro. Now we are moving to another course of the same article, which I was speaking about earlier, Valery Picard. But before that, I will conclude that the next speaker will be Vladimir Milov, because he needs to leave us a little bit earlier. So Vladimir, be ready to be a next speaker. Valery, please.
Thank you, Mr. Kubilius. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I would like to discuss the issue whether it is possible to transform the war from a zero-sum game, win-lose, or even a negative-sum game, lose-lose, to a win-win game, a positive-sum. I would start from the point whether the death of Putin will mean end of the war. Indeed, we shall have Putin 2.0 and Hawkins army and fast-banned military industry and aggressive toxic TV and the poisoned people. So that means that the war will continue and the empire strikes back after a respite, as we remember from history of Chechen wars. Even at its own territory, Russia can continue the war from its own territory, as it was in August 2014. So speaking a lot with the American and European analysts, we see that they consider just two major groups of scenarios. Scenario of consolidation of power, which means continued war, more nuclear threat, threat of escalation, and strengthening of China and the whole authoritarian axis, because Russia, with this consolidated power, became more and more satellite of China, depending on many political and economic issues. And the group of scenarios of collapse with uncontrolled proliferation of nuclear and excessive strengthening of China with Russian resources and ethnic cleansing, refugee crisis, and so on. This is simply a mental trap prepared by Kremlin. So just two scenarios: consolidation of power and collapse of power in Moscow, because this is the disease of so-called Moscow centrism. If we consider just Moscow as the only one city in the Russian Federation or Russian Empire, then there we have just two scenarios: consolidation of power and collapse of power, both scenarios bring us nuclear risks, refugee risks, and Chinese risks. So this is both scenarios are bad for European Union, for United States, for Ukraine, and both scenarios are good just for China. This is a mental trap. So I don't want to overload you with different sub-scenarios of both scenario groups, power consolidation and power collapse. Just everything is available online, just to say that everything is well analyzed, and we can see that either Stalinization or chaos or clash of power groups in Russia, which brings us either Stalinization or chaos, will continue. So is democracy possible in Russia? Here I would like to quote a famous Russian philosopher, Nikolai Berdyaev, who wrote 100 years ago, from February to October of 1917, all kinds of parties and ideas paraded before the admiring Russian gaze. And what did the Russian man choose? What he had, that's a Tsar and an empire. So democratic elections, as far as we know, need political parties, equal access to media, protection of canvassers and observers, honest counting of votes, a lot of NGOs capable to monitor and protect, and courts to protect justice and so on. So that means that democracy is possible in Russia, but if someone thinks that democracy is possible without deep political changes in Russia, we can say, no, you cannot. Second group of scenarios also brings us some chaotic and or Stalinization prospects, which are losing for both United States, European Union, and Ukraine, and indeed the Russian people. I would like just to emphasize that there is no mechanism of legal succession, so power struggle is inevitable, and history proves that several years are necessary to consolidate power in Russia, from 4 to 10 years, which means high risk of collapse during this period. So collapse brings us unacceptable risks of nuclear, of China strengthening, internal conflicts, and even spreading radical Islamism or second ISIS. So the collapse, as Dmitry already says, is inevitable. Risks are absolutely unacceptable for both, for all countries in the world. So the process must be managed. So how can we avoid these risks of both collapse and Stalinization? By Re-Federalization scenario. So there is a third scenario, which means that not only power in Moscow collapses or concentrates or consolidates, but agency of Russian regions, first of all, national republics, is increasing. So people in the leading Russian regions don't want the war, don't want new conquests, don't want nuclear weapons, don't want Chinese imperialism. They want security, stability, order, more money from their local economies, and indeed different ethnic groups want development of their cultures and languages and so on. So this Re-Federalization scenario brings us denuclearization of region, which is possible indeed if regions are really responsible for their destiny, centers of stability and order and human rights protection. And we should be aware that national identities is the only barrier to radical Islamism in Muslim republics. And national identities in Turkic and Mongolic people are barriers to Chinese penetration, because nobody wants to trade Moscow imperialism for Chinese imperialism. So all ties which hold the empire together are now weakening and weakening every day. So we have decline of unity and legitimacy, and we should learn some lessons from 1991 that systemic legitimacy weaken gradually, and one day disintegration happens rapidly. And the key role indeed is played by all the elites, not new elites. We know these own stories of 1991. Indeed, new leaders are important, but as holders of vision of the future. And people want to preserve security and stability in all countries, in all cities, and all settlements. And return to the business usual isn't possible, because the old system will crash one day. And comparing 1991 and 2023, we see very clearly that there are some similarities which decline legitimacy of the regime, but there are some new factors which even more decline legitimacy of the regime, like failed war, sanctions, demographic factors, and so on. So our to-do list, just finishing my speech, our to-do list for European and American allies is understand the risks, deeply analyze scenarios, risks, and consequences, stay true to the basic principles of the United Nations, and support peaceful re-federalization, which is win-win game for all for Russian peoples of Russian Federation, Ukrainian people, European nations, and so on. Insist on the key principles like denuclearization, peaceful resolution of conflict, human rights, punishment of war criminals, and throw away the traditional Moscow centrism, which is very obsolete. Speak to the local elites, not to Moscow, and defeat authoritarian access, not on the battlefield, but by destroying its strategy and treaties, like Sun Tzu taught us 2,500 years ago. This vision is in details described in Sustainable Peace Manifesto, which we offer to your attention, dear ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks a lot, Valery. Thanks a lot. And I forgot to present you as co-founder of Nova Kraina as a new country NGO. And thanks a lot for very clear message. And now I turn to Vladimir Milov. So we spoke about your recent publications, recent work. So Vladimir, again, no need to be, to long presentation. Vice President of Free Russia Foundation. And of course, we know Vladimir for a long period of time. It's really very active now opponent of Putin, friend of Alexei Navalny, but also earlier, was spending his efforts to modernize Russia, being Vice Minister of Energy. So, Vladimir, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Andrews, and thank you, colleagues. A very interesting and thoughtful discussion. And thanks again for mentioning our joint paper with Fyodor Kosheninnikov. Yes, we can, the outline for future democratic Russia. Lots of ideas discussed today have been mentioning here. And I very much like the concept of a peaceful re-federalization of Russia, except that I think we should not forget that Russia was never a true federation. It was in the 90s, it was established as a federation only on paper, but the regions, municipalities, and different ethnic minorities that populate Russia never truly had a political authority, and their degree of participation in decision making about whether Russia is going. I believe that if Russia was a federal state, that it never waged any war against its neighbors or against its own breakaway regions like Chechnya. By the way, in the 1990s, when we had a much more pluralistic and democratic environment, there was very significant opposition to war in Chechnya, which launched in 1994, also coming from regions and local communities. This is, I think, a proof of my thought that the federal decentralized Russia will also tend to be peaceful. Yeah.
Something wrong is with sound. So
Sorry?
maybe Mante, it's a problem of European Parliament, because Vladimir is exactly in our office and something wrong. But now maybe Mante will help to change.
Is it some problems with serious issues, right?
So maybe you can
maybe we can turn to Irina.
Okay, let me, Andres, I will connect.
Yeah. Or Vladimir, come to my office. Maybe let's now switch to Irina, and then we shall come back with Vladimir.
Are you sure?
Irina, yeah, go on, and then we shall come back with Vladimir.
Yeah. Hopefully, Vladimir will not be irritated with my intervention. You can hear me, right?
Absolutely, perfect.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I am always nervous about the sound and all the technical things. First, thank you very much for this kind invitation. It's fantastically interesting for me, this seminar. But I would like to say from the very beginning that I'm not a politician and I don't have any claim to be the one. I am a political scientist and I do research on federalism since many years. I just fear to say how many. Frankly speaking, I'm a stronger, because this is my subject, I'm a strong defender, a strong supporter of the federal idea, and in particular, the implementation of the federal idea and the federal principles of Russia. So, sorry?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Sorry, yeah, okay.
Sorry, now, what should I continue or should I?
Continue. Yeah, sorry, it's my fault, yeah.
Okay, sorry, okay, so I just return, right. So I'm a strong supporter of the federal idea myself and all over the world, and I'm also a strong supporter in particular, regarding the implementation of this fantastic federal idea in Russia, although how Vladimir rightly said, Russia has never been a federation and does not have any record of being a genuine federation, but still, why not to dream? Exactly because I love federalism. For this very reason, I am strongly, against the simplification of the issues which are connected to federalism. Is one of the most complicated orders, state orders, if you want. And as far as I understood the logic of the article, I'm sorry for that. Probably this is my mistake, but I understood it. That's okay. This is the defeat will cause the Russian strategic defeat will cause uncertainty, and to overcome the uncertainty. So this is the logic. To overcome the uncertainty, what should be done? This is to reform Russia, and how to reform Russia to make a genuine federation out of Russia. And then the West should engage not in kind of any regions, but of the reasonable reasons, particularly from the ethnic republic. So, and this will be the way of the win-win situation. Frankly speaking, I don't see it that way because many things are kind of escaping from the analysis. Again, I'm sorry for that. And this is the whole list of the things, but because of the lack of time, I can hardly mention only 3 or 2 of them. And one is about federalization of Russia, that federalism is not a kind of independent sector of reforms, if you want. This is, you cannot just pick out something and say, we are going to make a federal Russia. It's not possible. It's absolutely not possible, neither theoretically, not practically. Federalism can only be kind of probably progressed as an element in the comprehensive reforms. So how about that? All the theories of federalism, there are thousands, there are libraries written on what is federalism and how to do a federal state, what is the institutional design of the federal state. And everywhere you will find the notion of the safeguards. So these are the safeguards, you need to think about the safeguards. The safeguard, federalism is not self-sustainable order. This is tremendously important. It is not. We want it to be, but it is not. And what are the safeguards? The safeguards are the other institutions, just let me remind you some. The first is the proper work of the Constitutional Court. If you don't have the Constitutional Court being impartial, being not on the side of center or of the regions, but making it constitutional work, you would never create federation. Then this is the political parties. You cannot make federalism without political parties, without the party competition. How about that? So this is, again, this is federalism. The talk on federalism is much more than the center-regional relations. Another thing, so this is the local self-government. How are you going to build federalism without local self-government? And this is one of the, I would say, the most kind of probably the core of the difficulties lie there. So federalism is not only about the state, the 2 tiers of the state government, namely this of the national level and this of the regions. This is about the localities. And this is how the politicians would grow, you know, making their career from the local level to the regional level, building their reputation, how this is the case in European Union, in the United States, and in Germany. And I'm particularly making research on Germany, so on German federalism and local self-governance. So these things, you know, so again, you know, how can you just tear away these federal issues from the whole context and say, let's build a federation? Let's build federation, sure. You know, I share your purpose absolutely, but I don't see the means. You know, I think if we are serious, let's talk seriously about serious questions. And this is exactly now the time to put the questions. You know, I cannot talk about scenarios. Scenarios is an important analytical tool, you know, and so on and so forth. But you know, but they kind of this is tempting easy, you know, to build a scenario, how to realize it, you know. So even this win-win, the most, you know, the best thing ever. And probably one of the last things is probably the pre-last thing would be, how about the role of the center? You know, the federalism is not about strong regions. Federalism is strong regions and strong center. And you are not mentioning Moscow. So for you, Moscow is an evil. It is evil. It is evil. And this is, Moscow is the creator of this power vertical and Kirienko and presidential administration and all things. Yeah, sure, yes. But what will be the role of Moscow in your picture? You know, because you cannot make for the country like Russia, you cannot make a weak national center. You have to make it strong but different. Strong but different. You know, this is how to do that. Because, and this will be my last point, you know, if we talk, you know, how you talk, let's federalize Russia. Let's give the rights to the regions, in particular to those of the ethnic ones who, as you claim in your article, never were considered to be integral parts of Russia. Okay. So good, but you know, but then if I see your concept realized, this is not federation. This is this weak Russia. This is fragmented Russia. This is dissolving Russia. This is Russia of 90s. I remember it. And if we want this Russia, let's be honest. Let's be honest. It's much easier to build this Russia. If we want to do this, if you want to weaken Russia, no problem. I'm absolutely pro. You know, but then don't mix this talk with the talk about the general federalism. I'm sorry if I was rude, but really federalism is something, you know, you can touch my heart, you know, very deeply. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thanks, Irina. So you see, you know, something got above, you know, did not allow Vladimir to speak before you, since now Vladimir will need to answer all your, you know, all your points, in some way, skepticism and so on, but that is, you know, for what discussions are very much needed. So really very good. And now, Vladimir, I hope that, you know, technologies now are better because you switch off from European Parliament technology to understand, and you can see that European Union is also not so strong, especially in technologies. So.
Yeah, go. Thank you, Andres, and I hope you can hear me better now. And we tried a different method of connection. But as a matter of fact, listen, I totally agree with Ukrainian colleagues that decentralization helps. And that is a solution that will be the solution to many of Russia's historic problems. I completely disagree that decentralized Russia is equal to weak Russia. You know, I'm currently in the country which is named Belgium. And if you travel just a couple of hours by train from Antwerp to closer to the border with Luxembourg, you have like a totally different countries which speak different languages, and they have their own authority which defines a lot of important policies. And I cannot say that Belgium is weak. And that's really very important. One thing Russians never had during their multi-century history is that they never had a government which did care about their own well-being, interests, progress, development, education, whatever, right? We had only successive regimes which were focused on
territorial expansion, maniacal control over society, and that bring only suffering to our own people and to our neighboring peoples and countries and so on. I don't think that moving away from that and focusing on ourselves and providing rights and freedoms to our people, regions, municipalities, I don't think it makes us weaker. It only makes us stronger. I would like to say a few points. There is, in all of these discussions, I think there is a major methodological flaw, because we implied that somehow after Russia's military defeat in Ukraine, which is necessary because Russia needs to be taught a lesson, that an aggression against neighboring sovereign country should be punishable. Attempt for genocidal annihilation of peaceful sovereign nations should be punishable. Disrespect for international rule-based order should be punishable. That is a very important lesson without which Russia will not be able to move forward, which is why Putin's military defeat in Ukraine is very necessary for Russia's progress and any form of future existence. But in a lot of discussions, people shorten the link between military defeat in Ukraine and major changes, including what people call a collapse. That is a complicated relationship. A major formula is we won't be there yet. Military defeat in Ukraine alone will not immediately lead to collapse or guaranteed significant transformation of the Russian state. We need to talk about that in detail, what is happening in between and what are the mechanisms connecting these two important developments. The other thing, when people speak about federalization and decentralization of Russia, a lot of commentators immediately link this to a country's disintegration and falling apart into separate territorial units, countries, independent states, whatever. This is also a much more complicated relationship. And, you know, I would advise against lightly using the term empire, because the Russian Empire have been already disintegrating for quite a long time. The first wave came with the 1917, where many of the former territories of the Russian Empire became independent states. The second wave came after the dissolution of the USSR in 1991, when also another major set of nations that were formerly subjugated and controlled by Russian Empire have become independent. It is important to understand that already significant stages of disintegration of the empire have already happened. What we have left now, yes, we do have significant role played by the ethnic minorities, and some of them might want independence, but generally ethnic minorities comprise only about 15% of the Russian population, and some, again, not very big portion of Russian territory. Most of the Russian territory is inhabited by ethnic Russians, predominantly by ethnic Russians, who comprise also 81% of the population of the country. That is a very different situation than we had in the late years of the USSR, where ethnic Russians comprised only 50%, now 81%. There is zero separatism and desire to break apart by inhabitants of Russian-speaking, Russian-populated regions. There is no way that Chelyabinsk wants to separate from Sverdlovsk. There is zero tendency towards that. And as a matter of fact, I have to say that we had this experience in early 90s when regions in a chaotic transition, post-Soviet transition, regions tried to impose trade barriers for movement of people. Some of them even imposed a quasi-monetary independence, like introducing their own monetary surrogates, regional money, and so on. People remember that period and remember it negatively. This is actually one of the reasons why Putin's initial rhetoric of bringing the country back together resonated with the Russians since 1999, because it created artificial barriers. It's pretty natural for people to remove barriers. This is what United Europe, democratic Europe, is all about. Removal of barriers for trade, investment, and movement of goods, movement of people, and so on, which means like This is what I say in my article, which Dmitro mentioned, written for Center of Liberal Modernity in Berlin. By the way, viewers should read it in full. I'm against cherry picking my half quotes from it. Please read it in full. So the point that I make there, if Russia somehow eventually becomes disintegrated, there will be a major movement of reintegration, creating a joint, at least economic space for free movement and so on. So my point is federalism is a very important discussion, and we present this, lots of views on this with our joint paper with Fyodor Krasheninnikov, outline for a future democratic Russia. We also talk about what Irina mentioned, not just federalism is not a panacea, it's not the only instrument. Parliamentarism, local self-governance, like a major cross-country devolution of powers and creating of multiple checks and balances. What I mean when I speak about hothead integrationistas is that if we pick just one scenario, one instrument, how to solve all Russia's problems and make Russia a peaceful, inward-looking, progress-oriented democratic country, we need to focus on all of that, all of those institutions and creating a balance between them. Just one solution alone, be it federalism or countries' disintegration, will not solve it. And disintegration of Russia, it's actually one of the worst solutions. I'm not trying to scare anyone. If it has to be, it has to be. I don't have like personal attitude towards that. But with the lack of separatism, with the major regions mostly inhabited by ethnic Russians, there will be people like Yugoslav irredentists of early 20th century, like Slobodan Milosevic and others, who would come and say, we want to bring it back together. And this is actually what the Red Army did 100 years ago, because we had a lot of different states during a civil war 100 years ago. But a lot of people came to actually bring them back together. This is not a solution. A solution is a balanced Russia where people have a say, when there is a rule of law, when there are multiple institutions and ability for self-determination, including for ethnic minorities. If they want to be independent, that's pretty much okay. What I'm saying about doing Putin a favor, yes, Putin can use anything for propaganda purposes. Question is not about that. Question is, what of his propaganda arguments are resonating with the Russian people? We don't need to give Putin that unnecessary assistance in pushing forward some ideas which do not really meet substantial demand in reality on the ground. So federalization is, I think, we might all agree that that's the way to go. How much power Russian people and Russian regions and ethnic minorities would determine to be necessary to effectively self-govern and get back onto the road of progress and development against aggression and oppression, it's for them to decide. But we need to help them build a community and environment in which people really decide on their future, not some centralized rulers in Moscow, St. Petersburg, or anywhere else. I think we can all agree on that. We've written a lot of detail about where do we go from here in our paper with Fyodor Krasheninnikov, and I suggest that people read it and provide some feedback in comments and so on. But again, federalization is extremely important, and I think that's a solution for lasting peace and for Russia becoming a normal, peaceful, democratic country once and for all. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Vladimir. Really, we shall try to invite you and Fyodor Krasheninnikov, to present your book on your paper, on our some of next, webinars, because that's very, very interesting and very important to discuss. I know that you will run away, so thanks a lot, Vladimir, really for being with us. And now I'm giving the floor to Alexandra Garmazhapova from Free Buryatia Foundation. So tell us, Alexandra, what Buryatia is going to do in in this, Re-Federalization, perspective?
Hello, dear colleagues, and I'm grateful for invitation to this important conversation. Colleagues very often discussed about ethnic minorities, but without minorities, unfortunately, it's ordinary situation. I was born in Buryatia, it's true, but it's very important to say I grew up in St. Petersburg. I think I try to be like a bridge between regions and center, St. Petersburg and Moscow. I agree with Vladimir that federation is extremely important topic. It's true. I don't like discussion about collapse of Russian Federation because I was a journalist in Chechnya and Dagestan too. And I disagree with some colleagues who like to say that in Dagestan, many people want to live in an independent country. It's not true, in my opinion. We should understand that an empire is based on the power of the center, for example, and traitors among ethnic minorities groups, for example, because head of Buryatia, Alexei Tsidianov, he is ethnic Buryat, and he sent many residents of Buryatia to Ukraine to the war. It's fact, and we should understand this. I think why I don't, I want to add why I don't like discussions about collapse of Russia, because unfortunately many people in Ukraine too, they don't know about situation between Ossetians and Ingush, because they have big conflict for Prigorny district, for example, and we have interesting relations between Tatars and Bashkirs, because I don't know why officially some Tatars, they are officially Bashkirs, because Bashkirs wanted to create official republic, Bashkortostan. In fact, some ethnic regions included people, not indigenous people. In Buryatia, for example, ethnic Buryats, they are 30% only, ethnic Russians 70%. How you can imagine how Buryat will vote for independent country? In my opinion, it's naivim. But I don't know why some colleagues didn't say about very, very important point about historical memory. Because in Russia, unfortunately, we don't know about our real history. We have history official. We are always right. We are always greatest in the world, and we don't have didn't have historical mistakes. In my opinion, we need, before maybe federalization, we need de-chauvinization, because unfortunately, yes, we have imperial values. It's important for every citizens of Russian Federation. It's not situation, for example, Buryats, Avars and Chechens, they are good. Ethnic Russians, they are not good. It's not true. And we should understand, unfortunately, we participate in this war today. And before federalization, we should take responsibility for this war. It's a situation for every citizens of Russian Federation. And, but it's very important, unfortunately, many representatives of ethnic minorities group, for example, Buryats too, we don't know our languages because Moscow, I think, crashed to ethnic minorities group, and we don't know our history, we don't know our languages. It's a good basis for propaganda, and it's a good basis for hate speeches against Ukrainians, because why Ukrainians know their history, their languages, etc. And it's really what we, for example, some files where we should work, and before Re-Federalization, about Re-Federalization, about municipal authority, for example, checks and balances system, rule of law, is what Vladimir said. I just agree on this point. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Alexandra. Now we are moving into question and answers. You know, there are some questions on chat. So I would suggest that all the speakers should look a little bit into the chat. There are not too many questions, but nevertheless, I would like, you know, first of all, maybe to, to ask both, I don't know, Irina and, yeah, I see Valery wants to jump in. But yeah, theoretical question, you know. Well, federalization or decentralization this is not unique, you know, what Russian Democrats now are thinking about. I mean, if you will look into the history of different countries, so there were, you know, efforts to decentralize. I remember Great Britain recently, you know, one with devolution of powers to Scotland and to, I don't know if they are very happy with that, but nevertheless, you know, that was done. So, I mean, really, you know, is that such an impossible idea for Russia, for Russian Democrats, really to move into this, you know, decentralization, or, you know, power to the regions, like Vladimir Khodorkovsky is speaking in his book, you know, How to Slay the Dragon, and then, you know, we have Ukraine example, you know, where we consider that regional reforms, which were done after Maidan, giving powers to regions, to Hromadas and so on, was very successful reform. So, so first of all, maybe I will ask Irina if that's, you know, if that is a possible task, or you consider that, you know, Russia will not be able to make really such reforms. And then Valery.
Thank you very much. This is a fantastic question. Thank you. I'm really happy that you asked it. And, you know, I could sing you, you know, a song for an hour, you know, explaining all these things, but I will try to be very short. And indeed, you are right. There are many different models of decentralization, which sometimes called devolution, in the other cases not. So this is the decentralization was prescribed by to many, for instance, African countries, by the international institutions like the Monetary Fund, you know, in order to fight the corruption, to bring the people closer to the governments, the local services, and so on and so forth. However, the results are mixed. You know, so this is what the evidence and what the papers would tell us. So the results are mixed. The decentralization is not an absolute remedy in fighting corruption, in making more democracy, and so on and so forth. And so this is the first kind of answer. The second answer is that we would need to make, and please believe me, it's very important. And let's be accurate with the terms, meaning that federalism is one thing and decentralization is the other thing. Federalism is a constitutional contract, right? So it's written in the constitution. And so this is about constitutional checks and balances. And this is really hard to kind of cancel. Decentralization can, you know, unitary states, there are many unitary states which are decentralized, but they're not federal states. So these are different things. So we cannot talk about these two things interchangeably at the same sentence. It's just not correct. And you know what I want to say, you know, just very briefly answering one of the questions, that the Ukrainians are positive in thinking and the Russians, me, are non-positive in thinking, you know. So this is, I really don't like this dichotomy between positive thinking and negative thinking, you know, because positive thinking for me is kind of naive thinking, if you want. And negative thinking in this respect, it's not negative. But what we want to do, if we are serious, We not only want to build a decentralized Russia, federal Russia, or I don't know what kind of Russia, but what we all want, we want that this model would not degenerate again into Putin model or new Putin model. This is what we need to maximize. So we don't need to you can maximize only one thing. You cannot reach all the goals altogether. You know, for me, the most important thing is that nie wieder, okay, so never again. So the Putin model would not be restored. Okay, and we are very positive now. We say, okay, federalization of Russia, so easy, you know, and in 5 years, in 6 years, in 10 years, the Putin model will be revived. What then? What then? And neither of us, also not me, you know, ever mentioned the need for coordination, for horizontal coordination. What are these regions if you kind of, if the West picks up some of the reasonable regional leaders and try to negotiate with them without any horizontal coordination? This is the main deficit of Russia. And this deficit shows how far we are, not only from federal model, but also from the decentralized model, that there is no horizontal links. Indeed, this is an imperial science. This is a sign of an empire. I absolutely agree. But unless the governors would learn how to horizontally coordinate, you would never ever, you know, achieve anything in trying to engage separately, you know, Western efforts with particular governors, because it would be absolutely not only political suicide, but I would say, you know, physical death probably. Thank you.
Okay, good. And now Valery Pekar, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Kubilus. I would like to comment some points in the discussion. First, I can't understand why we use word separatism. We don't discuss separatism today. We discuss federalism, and federalism and separatism are totally two different things. Even more, federalism would oppose separatism and make separatism weaken if regions could get some self-governance. Indeed, neither national republics nor Russian-speaking regions would like to separate, but they would be happy to have more self-governance, like Siberia or like Nizhny Novgorod or something like that. Second point, I totally disagree with Mr. Milov that national minorities are 15% today in Russia. Russian official statistics shows 28%, and in practice it could be even more. And indeed, when we did our scenario analysis and prepare our article, we spoke to people from not only from Moscow and St. Petersburg. We, Dmitry and me, spoke to Tatars, Bashkirs, Buryats, Kalmyks, Yakuts, and many other national minorities, which sometimes are not minorities because they are majorities in their own national republics. Then I would like to comment 4 points by Irina. First, about democracy and federalization. Indeed, democracy is much more complicated thing, and democracy needs maybe a whole generation to install. But federalism could precede democracy, and democracy could be built easier when we already install self-governance on regions. So the federalization could be the first step towards democracy in Russia. Second is a very good point made by Irina, that we need for federalization, we need subjects of this process. So this process isn't automatic. Who are subjects of the federalization? Local elites, indeed. They are subjects, like we see in many other post-Soviet countries. Third, strong regions and strong center. Indeed, federalization means strong regions and less strong center. And 4 points. That means that, and federal Russia means weaker Russia. Indeed not, because there are many federal states which are not weak states. I know at least 2 big, very big states which are federal and very strong, which are United States and India, and which are comparable with Russia in terms of size and population, and indeed India much greater. And so I think that I absolutely agree with Irina that we should very accurately use our terms. And I think that this discussion will be a good lesson for all of us to use all these terms very, very accurately. So we are speaking, and then my last point is about positive and negative thinking. Indeed, positive and negative thinking are, let's say, some labels which are put on speakers. But indeed, we in Ukraine decline any statements that nothing could be done with Russia, because we believe that this is not true. We believe that all nations, all peoples could build their own democratic and free countries. So we transform this into another kind of question. What should we do to transform Russia into a democratic country which never threatens its neighbors or other countries far from their borders? We try to offer a vision, to offer a way, and indeed we would like to hear from our Russian colleagues their vision of the way, not just statements that nothing could be done, because we believe that statements like nothing could be done means that the war would be permanent for generations and generations. Thank you.
Well, great. I will jump maybe here with some comment and question. No, because really I see good joint points among Russian experts and Ukrainian experts about the future of Russia, with Re-Federalization and so on. Well, of course, since we are not, at least myself, I am not political science, scientists, so maybe we are sometimes making mistakes in terminology, but nevertheless, I see that, you as experts are speaking about the same. And as I said, Mikhail Khodorkovsky in his book also speaks about the same. Different maybe, approaches, but the same language of Re-Federalization is very much needed for Russia. How to do it, it's another question and so on. But I see issue on the Western side, and I see the need really that both Ukrainians and Russian experts and liberal opposition would try to unite efforts to convince the West that this is a way how really after defeat, Russia can become different with assistance of, of the West, with assistance of Ukrainians, but of course, things will be made by Russians. But for time being, I am really worried about this prevailing mood in the West that nothing is possible to be done in Russia. Russia will always stay like it is now, Putin or not Putin, Prigozhin will resurrect if there will be no Putin, and this, like Dmitry was saying, chicken Kiev speeches everywhere in the mind, in the West. So my point is really that, we need to look how we can unite our efforts to convince the West. And that is a common task, common job, both for Ukrainians and for Russians, and for us who are living in the neighborhood. So that is one thing. Second, I see questions where people still do not think that defeat of Russia can be, a window, can bring a window of opportunity for positive change. People are afraid. Somebody is writing, that here can be revanchist mood immediately to appear in Russia, or this dissolution, very brutal dissolution of Russia can start to happen. So I always, my small comment, I'm always using this example of Second World War and how Churchill and Roosevelt came down to the very clear decision or declaration what is their goal in the war. When they said that, but just in 1943, I looked into history books, 1943 in Casablanca, they came to the agreement that the goal of the war, the goal of the common efforts, of Great Britain and United States is to achieve unconditional defeat of Hitler. And Roosevelt explained in a very clear language. I'm always saying, let's use that language again now, because he said, well, this will be not the defeat of German nation. It will be defeat of Hitler and Nazi ideology. And that is a way how we can expect that, German nation will reborn as a normal, democratic nation. So that was very clear, point, very clear language, very clear understanding. And this is still missing. There is lack of that in the Western community now. So we need to see that as our challenge, common challenge, to convince and to speak out. And here is exactly when Russian and Ukrainian efforts, Russian, efforts of Russian Democrats can be of very, very big use and benefit. I see now Irina wants to jump, maybe then Dmitro, and we are coming, closer and closer to the end of our discussion, and then Alexandra, and we shall conclude maybe, exactly after an hour and a half, as we usually are doing. So Irina, please go on.
Yeah, I will try to be as brief as possible. First, Valery, thank you very much. I agree with many of the points of yours, but one, so that the federations would have a weaker center. This is not the point. At least all the theoretical literature would be against you, and you would need to invent your own theory. And by the way, indeed, not only USA and India. If you see, all the giant countries are federations, all of them, except for Chinese People's Republic. But this is not a democracy. All democratic giant countries are federations, and this is absolutely the lesson and the hint, for Russia. So, but then very small point about strong and weak. I see probably the people see strong as evil. If you say strong center, it's kind of evil. It's something very bad. But strong, we need about to see the definition of strong. Strong means effective. Strong does not mean uncontrolled, unaccountable. It's not about that. Strong means effective and effectively making its services, for the nation, and not penetrating to its kind of limited, constrained by the regions, by the local authorities. So strong is not meaning this. So strong is not a bad word in the kind of federalist democratic language. It's a good connotation. It's not bad, because antithesis to strong is not weak, but antithesis to strong is incapable and ineffective. So, and then my very last point, this is nothing could be done. I'm very far, I want to be understood correctly. I'm very far from seeing as nothing could be done. It should be done, absolutely, because I absolutely share the idea that Russia poses a threat. Russia poses a threat to the whole world, and this is absolutely unacceptable. But we need to think, twice, 3 times, 4 times before we start doing something. And because we are responsible people, what do we want for? This would be kind of never such a country like Russia, succeeded sustainably, it's not 90s, sustainably succeeded in making reforms. So we need to see costs, the risks, and non-guarantees. And, and the course of reforms should be thought through before you start it, on the border, on the shore, and then you already start moving. I just want to draw the attention that it is indeed difficult, but not impossible. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And now, Dmitro, please go on. Your final comments.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. I think that we can state that there is there is an evolution in discussing all those things. Unfortunately, it's coming very, very slow, because I cannot agree more with what Irina has said, that we have to think more and more and discuss what can be done in future. But I have to admit that we're having a little bit different motivation for doing this, because me staying in Kyiv with my family and my 6 years old son, I unfortunately cannot stay reluctant and cannot stay absolutely logical thinking about how many years we can think more, because it is already 1.5 years of full-scale aggression against Ukraine. So we have just to admit to ourselves that we have a bit different motivation. My motivation now, and this is not bad, this is objective. My motivation now is to create a path of decision-making for Western policymakers, how they can provide Ukraine with all the necessary weapons and support in short terms of how to lead to the end of war. But they cannot do this. And I feel that there is a huge problem in the decision-making process on the West because of the fear, what will happen after Russia will get a military defeat on the Ukrainian land. And this is why we are launching this discussion. And of course, I totally understand that federalization process and federation as a concept is a very, very complicated thing. And it cannot be done in less than like 5-10 years. Unfortunately, I do not have this term to wait when the war will end. So I just want to point out these differences and how Russian Federation of future and how this document of Krasheninnikov and Milov will be implemented. This is up to Russians to decide. But now we need to cooperate how to end the war. And this is our top and key priority. And of course, to do this and to cooperate in this agenda, we have to understand what is the future of the Russian Federation, because it's not, of course, it's for Russians. It's about their country. It's about their future. But unfortunately, it looks like that it's only like Ukrainians and opposition Russian citizens who is now working in European Parliament. They are fond of it. So we have to seek for more allies, for more partners. And, you know, there is a very unpopular thought in Kiev among, I'm trying to follow all this discussion. There is a very unpopular thought that we have to somehow to negotiate, somehow to exchange between Ukrainian and Russian experts. Well, I can explain why it is there. I can explain the motivation and this emotional approach. Me personally, I think that we cannot survive without it, and we have to do this. We have to communicate. We have to think how to lead the decision-making process to end the war, and then how to build the Russian Federation without any posing threats to all the world. But now I can, from my personal perspective, I think that this event says that we just made a lot of more perspectives of how to go to certain results in our discussions and how to form certain vision that could drive this decision-making process of how to end the war in Ukraine, because of knowing that we are certain about what future of Russian Federation we all want to share and we all want to see in the future. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dmitry. Thanks a lot. Very, very good words. And now, Alexandra.
I agree that federalism is very complicated. I agree, but federalism for Russian Federation is extremely important. But now, unfortunately, really maybe Irina disagrees with me, we don't have political culture. Always one side, I don't know why, blackmailed another side. Federal side blackmailed regions, regions blackmailed center. It's really our problem, because who are stronger, who is right? Always, unfortunately, it's our big problem. It's true. But finally, I want to say thank you, experts from Ukraine, because it's very important that the Ukrainians ready to help us, because I think experiments of decentralization in Ukraine is very important for us. I have good relations with Yuri Khanurov, your former prime minister. It's important because he's Buryat, too. And yes, he gave me very, very good, important advices how we can decentralization of Russia. He really, to be honest, I'm grateful Andrius Kubilius and Ukrainian experts. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, really. I think that, well, as I said at the beginning, I think that this was the first, but not the last, conversation, seminar where Ukrainian experts and Russian experts are speaking about the same, about the future of Russia. And I absolutely sure that such kind of conversation can have major influence on Western decision makers. I remember, Second World War. And definitely, Americans and Brits were speaking not only about how to win the war and, and how to provide, how to open the second front and so on. They also were discussing the future of Germany. And that discussion was quite a long one, starting from clear understanding that, unconditional defeat of Hitler is very much needed. Then, with this Morgenthau, idea about how to, industrialize Germany, and to leave it without any industry and so on. And then Marshall, and others after the Second World War came out with clear understanding that there is a need to have, democratic, strong Germany with strong economy, strong democracy, in order to stop Stalin attempts to, to enlarge his influence. So this is what, I see quite a, quite a parallel for today's job. We need to talk and we need to, to do everything in order, to bring victory of Ukraine as soon as possible. I agree absolutely with Dmitry. Understand I'm visiting from time to time Ukraine, and I see what you are facing, what you are suffering. Recently, I was in Kherson, Odessa, in the middle of missile attack, and so I can imagine what people are living through. That's very important. But in order to achieve such a victory, from my point of view, we need to be not afraid to talk about future of Russia and to show to the Western community, to the Western leaders, that there is possibility also for Russia after the defeat to transform itself to more normal country. And everybody, what we see here, everybody speaks about how to increase power of federal subjects, power of regions, and so on, in order to avoid again this tragedy of Russia, always to have too strong center, with Tsar or general secretary or president and so on, which, as we have seen, recently, always, have a tendency to become not only brutal against their own people, but also, aggressors towards the neighbor. So there is a chance, there is a window of opportunity to change that, historical tendency, and that is our common task. So I stop here. Thanks a lot. And let's keep in touch, and I hope that we shall have, and the most important point, Valery, I saw his, last sentence in the chat. He said, there are so many interesting questions in the chat that he will write another article in order to answer and to elaborate, some points which came in during this discussion. So we are waiting for Valery for your article, and thanks a lot again to everybody. Thanks. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.